All right. We are live. Thrilled to have closing out the year, the last Getting to Hell Yes for the year. Lucas, thanks for coming on. Super pumped. Introduction from Dave Dexter, who was just on a few weeks back. So glad we got this in calendar. I've had a great week of conversations with folks talking about the Getting to Hell Yes conversation, and it's been a really cool close to the finish. So thrilled to have you on and close it all out. I can't remember who we closed out last year with, but nonetheless, it's memorable. So everyone, thrilled to have Lucas here from Get 100. Get 100 is a fraud prevention company. We'll get into that a little bit more. And as we talk about Getting to Hell Yes, the premise, as always, if you're a first-time listener, is talking about the new style of selling. Our buyers have more information than ever before. We are helpers. We are not sellers anymore. And the idea of how can we enable and understand our customers' problems so we can kind of unblock them and help them get to their objectives even faster. Trick is knowing who is looking for help. And that's kind of like the stuff that we're always trying to figure out from like Getting to Hell Yes side of things is what are the characteristics, attributes, what are the tells that our market is telling us, or prospects are telling us when they're looking for help. Now, and that helps feed out your filters for your outbound, filters on how you even approach conversations, and maybe even some of your inbound conversations, because we really want to attract people into our pipeline that are seeking a solution. And in many cases, they haven't thought about how our solution solves it. So in the fraud context, maybe they're looking for something completely different than how we solve the problem, but it's their words and how they articulate the problem, which helps us bring them in to how we, into our pipeline and into our conversations. As always, if you're listening to this live, your comments are appreciated throughout. Please pump them in there we'll bring them up as we get them. Always enjoy a bit of interaction along the way. If you're catching this after the fact on LinkedIn, put your comments in there. Both Lucas and I will both get pinged throughout, and then we can kind of respond and jump on that. If you're listening to the podcast or on YouTube or whatever, any of your comments there will cycle through and make sure I get them back to Lucas. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, hit like, download the plus button. That always helps people find this show and be able to kind of learn from the things that we're learning every single day. So, Lucas, I'm stoked. You're stoked. Let's get this thing going here. A little about yourself, your background, and then how did you get in the role that you're in at Get 100, and what's the problem you guys are solving today?
All right, let's have some fun today.
Let's do this.
Well, I'm Lucas, obviously. Spent my last 15, I would say all my professional years in multifamily. Not planned. I planned on being on Broadway and doing music business, so I have a degree in that. And cool. I graduated downturn of the recession and just needed a job. So landed in multifamily, but thankfully I did. I've been on both sides of the biz. So I've been on the operator side, so worked on site. And then my last 15 years have been really managing like national strategic accounts for a CRM company, an updater, and then now fraud prevention, which is a needed tool. So how did I get here? It's very interesting. So myself and our founder, Karen Mayo, she and I competed twice. We were like arch enemies. So I was at Knox CRM. She created Funnel. So basically, I wouldn't even like accept her LinkedIn friend request.
Oh, wow.
Back then. And then I was at Updater, she was at Moved, and we said like third time's a charm, let's do this together. We knew of each other, we were introduced at a conference, and it was like OpTech 2024. She approached me and she's like, I'm thinking about starting a business. In 2024, yeah. So it was
224, like, that was in
actually
Maryland,
223. Right? It was 223. 224 we launched. So it was about 2.5 years ago. Okay. She approached me. I was introduced to her, and she's like, "I'm thinking of creating this next thing." And a lot of like operator friends of hers were coming to her saying, "I need a good collection agency." And with her kind of like entrepreneur brain, all right, why do you need a collection agency? Yeah. Result of two things: is it a life event that happens, or is it a poor screening decision up front? So obviously the poor screening decision up front is a solution that we've created. And she approached me and said, hey, would you like to come in, be my head of growth, and do this together and team up and not compete again? So we went on this like listening tour. Before we even established the product, we partnered with about 10 to 15 NMHC top 50s and just listened to what are their problems. If they had a magic wand scenario, like how would they fix it? And then what would be the ideal solution as it comes to fraud prevention if we could create this solution.
Yeah.
So really, 100 was made for multifamily by multifamily. Everyone that's like working here has been in the industry. This is not our first rodeo, so that's also a benefit. But that's how I kind of fell into this role. Was we decided to tackle a problem that it's not a sexy problem, fraud, right? But we are trying to make it a solution that is sexy, seamless, and does the job for our providers.
Gotcha. And so let's talk about why the problem persists. So, fraud, I mean, there's probably bunch of different angles to it. I mean, and, because I did some fraud work prior to this career, and like, kind of the conclusion we came to is that it's typically, now this was mortgage fraud and bank fraud. And so it's typically like not bad people doing bad things. It was good people in bad situations.
Yeah.
But what I'm reading about this can be a little bit different. So what are you seeing? How does fraud manifest itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple scenarios, but we are really targeting the bad actors, right? The folks that are not who they are.
That's a really bad thing.
Yeah, the ones that are fraudulently documenting pay stubs, IDs, synthetic fraud, all these various items that are constantly evolving, right? As fraud's evolving every day because technology's evolving.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to stay on top of it, but we are trying to circumvent and prevent the assets, the owner groups, and our partners from having these fraudsters come in and cause a detriment on the collections, the delinquency, and the property's overall health. So, I mean, fraud's evolving. I'm sure you saw like the Wall Street Journal article where there's like an influx in the demand for like these luxury homes because all these fraudulent folks are saying they make more than they actually make. So the demand for affordable is decreasing, even though they actually are the folks that should qualify. So it's an interesting article that came out, and I think it's really created a light on the fraud problem. Like a lot of folks don't think fraud's hitting their properties, and then you do an analysis, and
so when they find out they've got fraud. So here's the analog on this. Is that I did a ton of work in the field prior to career here, and we talked about fraud a bit. And the thing that we found was vendor fraud. We found like 20% of vendor fraud in all transactions, right? And it manifests itself different ways: bad timesheets, bad invoices, phony approvals, completely like made up invoices, that kind of stuff. But like it was a really uncomfortable conversation to talk about fraud, because it meant that there was control breakdowns, process breakdowns, systems breakdowns, people that you trusted you couldn't trust anymore. And like, how is it when you talk about fraud here? Like, is it do people feel uncomfortable talking about that it exists, or are they banging the table, pissed off and angry, or they feel like they've been violated? Like, how does that come up?
I think there's like a mix of emotions, right? So obviously, like with technology nowadays, I think fraud's more prevalent than it ever was. Because back in the day, you'd go and get a PDF, alter a pay stub, and then bring it into the office, and the leasing agent would have to do the underwriting, right?
Yeah.
Where there can even be fraud with the internal staff, right? So we see all various forms of it. But I feel like folks nowadays in multifamily, they know it's a problem. Their delinquency's out of control. Their collections are out of control. And that is something they need to solve for. So there's a fine tooth comb and magnifying glass on it that's saying like, we need to do something and put like these steps in place to prevent the overall delinquency, eviction, and bad debt that's happening because of the result of these fraudsters.
Because it gets expensive like this way. It gets way more.
It's like it's a lot easier to put the friction at the front of the funnel, which we do, than at the end of the funnel, right? Because at the end of the funnel, they're already through the process. You're like losing. At the front of the funnel, it may be not the best. It's a flip the script, right? Like so, in multifamily today, most of the friction is like you go on a website, you click apply, and that unit's yours. And they don't know who you are. They don't know how much you make. They don't know if you have eviction, bad debt, anything. And they hold it for you. Where we're kind of flipping the script and we're like, all right, we're not holding anything until you validate your identity. You tell us how much you make. Think like mortgage pre-approval, where you go in and you pre-approve yourself, and then we'll actually hold that unit for you. So we're increasing the friction up front, enough amount of friction where it's not like a cumbersome process for the applicant, but it's enough where it's like protecting the assets. And the applicants that are not fraudsters get through in minutes, So, but it's not, to your original question, is it difficult to bring up today? No, I feel like there's so many folks that know it's a problem. It's the big kind of topic of, I think, 2025 and into 2026, like
Yeah.
AI was, like centralized leasing. I think fraud's going to continue to evolve.
Well, particularly when we look at the fraud, like the gap between what's available, the desire. I think the thing is that we really want to get these unleased units leased.
Yeah.
And so the desire is to maybe be a little bit over enthusiastic about who's a practical candidate. So here's my hunch. So I was teasing about this earlier. So I got a hunch this year we're going to see something. So I'm going to lay this on you. So this is cold. So I think we're going to see something that we're not ready for. Because I did this myself just as a bit of an explorer. So it took me an hour and a half to code an agent to go and get a lease for me and negotiate a lease for me with another chatbot, right? And I was just trying to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
My hunch is that you're going to see people. So it's going to here's the curve. It's actually going to start as being bad actors, and towards the end of the year, it could be legit. So give me your opinion on this one. So at the beginning of the year, we're going to see people who are trying to negotiate concessions and trick the chatbots, the leasing chatbots, right? By coding an agent, doing the things, and it could be representative of a true person, or it could be non-representative. I yet to figure how that's going to land. Code an agent, go shop for a unit in a market. I did it in Fort Lauderdale, and be able to kind of like, because you can create fake, or you can use your real stuff and go through the process. So I was able to shop for a lease, and I didn't close on it. Obviously not. I'm saying this live, but I was just like, wanted to see how far I could go and how far the chatbot could negotiate for me. So I negotiated 2 months of concessions, and all of that all coded within the model that I had built. Hour and a half took me to do it. And I'm not super technical by any means. And so I was able to create an agent bot that did the shopping for me. So I have a hunch that by Q2, and I said this last week, we're going to see a bot v bot world where residents are going to create bots real quick to do their shopping for them. And that could be, that could present itself as fraudulent, non-fraudulent. And I think we're going to have some bad actors kind of middle of the year. And I've hunched that by the end of the year, there's actually going to be something you can pay for to do my apartment shopping for me, like a Trivago. You know what I mean? Yeah. It'll start with being nefarious. It'll end up like a Trivago, kind of like an aggregator that does the shopping and negotiating for you, because the negotiations just to be so available. So so now at which point is that fraudulent in the arc of that problem?
I think it's inevitable, right? Like technology's here to stay, and AI is here to stay. So that the renters want this on-demand, frictionless negotiation experience. So I think we'll see that, but I think it's up to the operators to put like actual fraud prevention technology in place, like a biometric scan. Like an AI bot is not going to be able
I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do that, right?
So that's
where I was able to get through the kind of like the firewalls and get all that stuff all figured out. And it did all the negotiation for me. And I was able to see the log, and I was like, wow, this thing's doing a really good job of figuring out what to buy.
Well, first of all, congratulations on doing that in an hour and a half, because I do not have that skill set. But it goes to show, like, as technology is evolving, we're going to see more and more of this. And that's why, I mean, this is not like a 100 plug, but that is why, like, whatever fraud prevention solution you're using, like it's imperative to have like cutting edge technology, like biometric scans, like CPN detectors to detect false social security numbers, etc. Where you can't get through that in a bot and like today, right? But that's going to continuously evolve. So
you got to have
continuously evolve.
A radar gun has to be better than the radar detector, right?
Yeah.
Like ultimately that's what has to happen. And it's going to go like this and ratchet to more complexity as things become more complex and more real.
It's going to be a constant battle that I think you say Q3, would you say Q3? I think it's going to be like,
well, Q2, yeah, I think we're going to see some like Q2 for sure, especially as we get into heavy leasing season. But like, it was so easy to build a bot to do the bot work for me. And so, I mean, it's tough if you're in the selling bot business, like, because you get paid per interaction, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm botting, I will like fake person is going to go out there and do the crawling for me. And then because everything is negotiable, especially these days, there's going to be negotiation, and that's all going to happen like real quick.
I see it happening too, It's not a theory. It's probably, I mean, let's not put it, I don't want to be the one putting it up there, but it's out there, right? I feel like
Mhm.
it's inevitable. It's just a matter of like, how do you protect yourself from it? And
Yeah.
protect your assets and protect your leasing teams.
Which comes into the identity verification, the fraud verification, because ultimately you got to have that upstream because it's going to happen, right? It's
Put the
too
friction
easy.
up front. Exactly. And like at the end of the day, we kind of say this thing, it's like, get rid of the empty calories where the historic model is like you have 10 leases on the weekend, by Monday 5 fall through because they're not financially qualified.
Yeah.
Why are you even like wasting your time on those when you can add the friction up front and have a more like predictable real pipeline of applications because you've
Mhm.
vetted them like a mortgage up front? So
Yeah.
that's where I think there is friction, there is a change, and with the leasing teams biggest change, right? Because they want to control the process. They're commissioned off of leases. So every
Yeah.
lease, every person that walks through that door when I was leasing, there I want them to lease because you want to get your commission check. So
100%.
sometimes there's like contradictory kind of like initiatives where it's like they want everyone in, but we're protecting the assets. So
So there's
at
two
the end of
boxes you're ticking there, right? There's a box for
yeah,
the leasing agent because I only want to have meetings with qualified people that are real people, and then the second part is the protection, the downside protection in terms of like bad debt. I mean, and everyone knows if you've rented a fraudster, it just gets worse at that moment
it's
because
yeah.
like you don't know because and then the laws are just starting to change where you can evict people, but generally speaking, it's complicated and it costs a lot of money. Could cost you your whole margin on that unit for the whole year, like with respect to legal fees and time it takes to actually get them out of there. And they know too, like the bad actors, they know the rules.
Oh, they know the rules and they tell their friends.
Right.
They get in, they tell their friends. That's why you need to have like risk models in place where, like in states that like it takes longer to evict, like maybe you're not letting somebody in that's just on the cusp because you know it's going to take longer to evict them.
Yeah.
And you know that you just have to have like these risk models in place if this, then that. And that's where you protect your assets.
So how do you guys go out there and find your buyers? Like, are you so for starters, in the fee manager versus the owner operator side of things, do you guys just is there a different buyer in those two different like large entities, like big categories?
The same buyer, just less, I would say less decision maker like buy-in. So like
Yeah.
with an owner operator, you are you're targeting them. It's their properties. It's usually a quicker decision and less folks involved. With a
Yeah.
lot of these like NMHC top 50 fee managers, you are you're getting 50 folks to buy in, and 10 can say yes, and then you get one no, and you have to start all over. And then you
Yeah.
have to get the ownerships involved. So it's a decentralized sales process where you may win the company, but you also have to win the individual ownership groups. So you're
Right.
constantly
Yeah.
buying within an organization.
It's complicated, right? And then I think that we need to, as sellers, we need to respect the motivations of the fee manager, and they can be different than the motivations of the owner operator.
They've got clients just like we're their client, so it's they're just trickling up the train, so you need to respect it. You also need to understand like what is going to make them look good to the owners so they can get more properties with an ownership group, or just like hold the assets longer. So that's when I'm like really working with these fee managers, like how do you make your client look good, and then when you make them look good, they want to do more business with you.
100%. Yep. Do you when you're kind of filtering for that market, where do you like to focus on? Like with respect to the owner operators, the size, all those things. Like where do you guys find the most amount of pull?
I think it's a balancing act, right? If you're partnering with a lot of the fee management companies out there, it's a respect thing to partner with them and not go above their head and go to all these ownership groups.
Yeah.
But if somebody's reaching out and they want to do business with you, like you're not going to say no, or you're just going to be cognizant of educating the fee managers, like, hey, I'm talking to this individual. So I just think it's constant transparency, communication, and under like balancing both sides of it. But
Yeah.
typically in my historic sales background, like I've partnered, if I'm partnering with a fee manager, I'm partnering with a fee manager, and I will respect the boundaries and not go above them to the owners.
Yeah.
Other folks have different tactics. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how I've historically done it.
I mean, some fee managers I've had conversations with, they actually give you the list of owners to go to.
Yeah, I mean that's great. That's a good partner, right? Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're looking for like true partners like that, where it's like, are you just a vendor or are you a partner to this company? And if you're a partner, they are willing to provide more information, do introductions, have you on their client meetings, and that's where we value the most is like the folks that want to be partners and not just a service provider.
Mhm. So you kind of open the conversation with an interesting kind of like comment and how like the uh, Karen was looking for a better collection agency, or she was hearing people asking for a better collection agency, and she turned that around into um, like fraud detection and fraud prevention at the front end of it. How else are they looking for? Like, how else is the customer articulating the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I would say multiple multiple facets. So one is so they're articulating the problem and like how Karen was kind of like, and we all kind of heard about it was like the collections is the result of bad debt. So
Yeah.
they're articulating, I have bad debt, which is I need to collect on it. So that's one result. The other is just the number of evictions, the number of turns, and I'm trying to think what else is like really like flags when it comes to our customers. It's folks that are coming in and skipping, like doing a look and lease special, moving in, and they're just like skipping. And also, we have fraudulent on-site teams, so there's various flags on like, hey, I need a solution for this problem. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of piecemeal solutions today, and a lot of these companies think, oh, we've got it right, but they're still getting fraud in the door, and they're still wasting a lot of time having the leasing agents be underwriters and having the on-site teams really be like the bad guys when it comes to telling folks about evictions, bad debt, et cetera. We should totally remove them. But I feel like I just did a long-winded answer to that question.
Well, it's curious because like there are different. To your point, there are different problems, right? There's like the downstream impact shows up in different ways depending on the severity. It
Yeah,
could be, maybe it starts with evictions, or it starts with how do I give
late
notice,
payments. To
late payments.
that's the
Thank you.
first result.
Right?
Yeah.
How do I manage late payments? How do I manage notice? How do I manage evictions? How do I manage bad debt? How do I manage collections? Like, who does my collections for me? Like, those are all different questions that they're going to ask. That's a function of there was a bad lease that was signed.
Yeah. And I think like the other pain is the amount of time the leasing teams are spending on unqualified individuals
Mhm.
is a time suck. It's a waste. It's a bad user
Mhm.
experience. So I mean, so if they had like the transparency up front and you remove the leasing teams from that, it's they have time to do more resident retention, do like focus on revenue generating items rather than these items that are not generating revenue, which are hand holding these fraudulent applicants through the process, trying to get them through, and they should never, they'll never qualify to begin with. And then they're doing this forensic accounting, trying to decipher, does this person make enough money to live here? That is not something a leasing agent's qualified to do, and they shouldn't do it because it's a conflict of interest. They're trying to get everyone in because, like we talked about, they're trying to get that commission check. So everybody, they want to be pushed in.
Yeah, no, the conflict of interest emerges in a number of different situations, and you've got to have controls and balances to be able to hedge on that. But it's a good point in that really they're not. I think that the cut and dry is that they're not qualified to do it, and you might even be bringing in litigious like HUD violations if you ask them to do that, right?
Yeah, you need to, I mean, like you have to have like fair housing, like everybody needs to be treated the same, everybody needs to be screened the same, the income requirements need to be the same, and a lot of mistakes can happen when you have a leasing agent manually reviewing stubs, and a lot of the stubs are fraudulent. How do they know? It's not going through like an OCR technology where it can say this document's been altered or tampered with. A
Yeah,
leasing agent is looking at a copy of a copy
yeah.
sometimes. um, and there's other technology out there that does like siloed processes where it's like, oh, they might do ID, income, credit, criminal, but one of the things that 100 really kind of prides itself on is we triangulate the data. So if somebody fails here, they may pass there. So we're just kind of like tying the pieces together from ID, income, background, criminal credit, and employment, and saying like, what are patterns of this individual, and are they truly who they are, or are they
Mhm.
fraudulent? Or is there a red flag that we should kind of take a second look on this?
So I guess the first question to the don't waste your time with unqualified buyers, like or lessors. Like, what are the what's the percentage of applicants that are practically not qualified to lease?
Yeah, and that this varies per market, per zip code, per asset class.
Sure.
Honestly, like what we see is that folks that like go and start the application process, at least 50% aren't even most of the time completing ID because, or not, I wouldn't say 50, I would say 40% are not completing ID because they're either fraudulent or they know they're going to be falsified and not qualified. They don't want to give
Mhm.
their information. Once they finally get past that ID step, if they are a true in like a renter that is qualified and wants to get through the process, they go through pretty quick. Once we
Mhm.
get them past ID, we have an 80% conversion ratio. So it's like, hey, these folks, they're qualified, they pass income, they pass financials, they're in. But it's the
Mhm.
ID piece where it's like folks are like, I got to do a biometric selfie scan, and you should see the stuff we see. It's like one of these things is not like the other. It's
Yeah.
you got like this picture is like of a young schoolboy, and this is like an old lady. They just like they don't add up, and folks still think you're going to get through the technology. They'll take a picture of
Yeah.
the fake ID and then a bio scan. It's hilarious.
We had that scenario. I had the scenario like early 2000s, hiring a person and, do the video call and all that stuff. And then it might have been 2005, six around there. Anyways, their person's coming in for their in-person interview and they've come across the country and they're in the elevator. And I'm like, you're not the person I talked to on the phone. You're a completely different
It's like
person.
it's like
It, like,
catfish, right?
it was like, like different size, height, shape, everything. And I was like, what are you doing here? Like, oh, I'm here for the, and I'm like, no, you're not. You're a different person. And I was like,
Turn
it was
around.
like right back down the elevator again. Okay, well, scratch that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a show on MTV called Catfish that's just like that.
Yeah,
It's like,
100%. So then is that the big, so then with the, given that you guys triangulate the data, oh, so the next question I had is that,
yeah,
oh, it was actually the 80% conversion. So then the benefit is that you've de-risked the revenue,
yeah,
right? Because that's the goal that everyone's trying to get to these days. So how can I de-risk revenue at the building level, at the ownership level, at the revenue management level? Because like, and even get on the getting paid on commission level, because like, it's just so flaky right now with the desire to lease up buildings, the amount of supply that's coming online, the turnover that's happening, the concessions that are giving. It's such a, there's such a, like a stomach level motivation to try and lease these units
yeah,
that it's inevitable that the desire, the conflict of interest that is, natural, it's kind of built in, starts to overwhelm the system and have a revenue impact because the commission you're getting paid in Q1 is going to be the bad debt that you're starting to accrue in Q2, Q3.
yeah. And a lot of it's like you see leasing agents pushing folks through that should have never even been qualified, and not like it happens, and sometimes the fraud happens on site. One of the benefits like with us is like we completely remove the leasing teams, so we're doing
Mhm.
all of like there's live support and like we're guiding the applicants through the process. The only thing that the leasing teams see is an approved application in their system. That's it.
Right.
So but I agree, like what you were saying is the conflict of interest is A, they're not qualified, B, to do like these financial underwriting and forensic accounting, B, it's a
Mhm.
conflict of interest. They want the funds, they want the lease, they want the money, and also
Yeah.
it's an emotional thing. Like you have this person in front of you, you like you're sympathetic and empathetic to be like, I want to get them in a lot of the times, and let's remove the leasing teams from the process. We'll be the bad guys. We'll tell them yes,
Mhm.
no, or they're approved. And with us, you'll never get somebody declined because of income, because we qualify them ahead of time. So, like mortgage pre-approval for multifamily, we are qualifying them to know that they can afford the unit. So you're never going to have a decline because of income through 100.
It's I was walking sites Labor Day in Washington, Seattle, and I sat in a few leasing sessions, and I found it really interesting to see like a lot of folks are filling out paper forms, like they're filling a thing. Like, so what happens there? Like, can they be saved?
And we don't allow it. So
Yeah.
anybody that's like, I mean, like, so you get cases where like, oh, they're elderly or they just don't have like technology to do these digital documents. And that's where come in the leasing office, we need a bioscan, we need all these other items. Like there's no pass go unless you go through the policy and procedures and like the stopgaps in place to prevent fraud. And that's for everybody, right? So if we're doing it for one applicant, we need to do it for all to remain
Yeah.
fair housing compliant, but also to circumvent the fraudsters. Because of course they're going to say, I don't have I don't have a phone, so I can't do it, or I have a paper stub, or a copy of a copy. So they know the way around it. And sometimes these, like with occupancy declining, every applicant counts, right? So we want every applicant to go through the process and be approved. That's just not the case, because there's so much fraud out there. And another thing is like just providing like the renter agency and transparency of like what you can afford. So a lot of times they're oh, I think I can afford this 2-bedroom. They'll apply in like the historic model, and they're just like declined. And it's like because of income. Well, we'll let them know, hey, guess what? Like you can't afford this 2-bedroom, but you can afford this like this 2-bedroom corner unit on the first floor, you know? So we'll surface like this is where you can afford. The agency and transparency is on them. So it's a better user experience. They're not just getting declined because maybe they're $50 short of that unit. So it's just providing more agency to the renter to have transparency on like what they financially qualify for.
Interesting. And so is the process that the renter like goes in through Get 100 first and then they figure out what they can afford, or is it initiated by the leasing agent?
Yeah, so there could be like 2 different scenarios. So they could tour the property, and they could scan a QR code and go through. We're taking over the application workflow. So they would apply through the 100 link, or they could just sight unseen, just click apply online and go through the process. So we're taking over that application. They have to pass ID to pass go. They have to do income to pass go, and then background criminal credit. So all of that's getting taken over and removed from the leasing team.
But conceivably, I mean, couldn't there be a situation where they go through you first and then you show them the properties they have available that they qualify for?
In the dream world.
Yeah.
It's almost like a reverse ILS at that point. But yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about the Trivago thing. Like it's reverse ILS. Like it's going to be, I'm going to specify. Just seeing so much of this where the renter is able to call the shots, and it'll be and be interesting to see how that all. I just think we're going to see a lot of changes in that application cycle in 2026 to deal with the fact that we need more renters. We need to get them through. We need good renters.
Yep.
And that's kind of the qualifier. That's the challenge, right?
It's
so how do you guys? So there's lots of fraud prevention out there. How are you guys different than what's out there?
Yeah, I'd say there's several reasons why we're different. So we are like mortgage pre-approval for multifamily. So we are adding, like I mentioned before, every other fraud provider is adding friction at the end, and they're taking units off market, even though they don't know who these people are. We are adding the friction in the front of the funnel intentionally to reduce the empty calorie applications when it comes to these properties and their application workflow. We also, so kind of like the 3 common problems in multifamily, what we heard when we did on this listening tour, one was like the technologies are siloed. So they're like, we call it a fraud cocktail, where they're like a little bit of ID over here, we do income over here, we do credit over here, we do criminal over here. And it's like nothing's talking or triangulating the data. That's problem 1. Problem 2, leasing agents are underwriting. So a lot of these other solutions out there, they still like, they'll say, here's the data, but leasing agents make the ultimate decision, which we were completely removing them from the process. And I'd say the third and the most broken is the financial model. The math is just not mathing for these other providers. So you're charging like $1.50 a unit for every unit, or $2 a unit for these fraud solutions, where you're not using them on every unit because every unit doesn't turn in a given year. So it just doesn't make sense to be charging these price per unit. So we basically, our cost, we're no cost to the property management companies. So we'll leave it at that.
So is it just for context, is it a teaser model? Is it a consumption model then?
Yeah, so the renters pay our fee.
Renters pay the fee. Okay. Yep. That does equal consumption, right?
Yep.
So that makes more sense, because like I think we're also seeing a lot of that this year. I actually haven't talked about that yet. But like we're moving to consumption-based model and we're getting a lot more buy-in because the unit-based model works if it applies to all units all the time. But when it's transactional, or I'll say event-driven, just event-driven is better language, then I don't know if it's going to apply to all of my units. So I feel kind of weird paying for all of it.
Yeah,
So unless you can deliver universal value to every single unit, all 300 units of that building, is it really fair to be charging on a per unit basis?
I mean, consumption makes sense. I mean, and that's where like the math hasn't been mathing for years, right? Multifamily has fell into the cycle of like price per unit, price per unit, price per unit.
Yeah.
Some technology makes sense. Some prop tech makes sense to be a price
Yeah.
per unit. Others don't. It's a transactional model, and we've chosen to go that route to align incentives with these operators and owners to make sure like, hey, we're not raking you through the coals when it comes to having to pay for our services. We are aligning incentives. We only make money when you make money.
Mhm.
So that is how we've kind of positioned ourselves. And that was one of the things we learned on the listening tour was like the math isn't mathing. We don't like fee based or unit based pricing, and some companies may, but you give them the option, and we've just
Yeah.
chosen to go that route.
Oh, agreed as well. Like, so we typically start out with consumption-based pricing. And then if you get to the point that you're fully deployed and you're doing kind of like the full suite of our products, then the unit pricing starts to become a better deal for you. And so that's that time to convert from consumption-based to unit-based, but that takes some time.
Yeah,
And you
I
might
mean,
never get there.
and if you're a big conglomerate, if you're an organization that's been around for a while, it's hard to shift your pricing model because like your financial models are made that way, and you're reporting to the board on price per unit, and to shift that is going to be it's a big event to do.
Yeah.
So we lucked out where we listened to the customer in the first place and built our model based off of what the customers wanted.
So then how do you find who needs fraud help?
All these
Mhm.
companies need it. It's a
Yeah.
matter of
Who's prioritizing fraud? You're right. Good point. Everybody's got the problem, but who's actually got it on their to-do list?
Yeah, I would say a lot of folks this year we've noticed and last year put on their to-do list, and they have like departments that are focusing on it for initiatives like how to streamline their technology, how to implement fraud solutions, and protect these assets and reduce these bad debt and delinquency.
Mhm.
Usually, you're talking to like the chiefs of technology or the CEOs. Sometimes they have a fraud department, right? But at the end of the day, we've seen everyone that we've talked to, it's from anywhere from like NMHC top 50 to small owner operators. Fraud is an issue,
Yeah.
delinquency is an issue, and they may have a solution today that is they think is solving, but it may not be solving it the way they want to, or it's in silos. But I think you'll continue to see a trend of folks focusing on fraud because every penny counts. And when you get
Yeah.
a bad actor in your property, it costs thousands, if not hundreds of thousands at times,
Yeah.
to get them out and to recover from it. So protect yourself, put that firewall up, and get these bad actors out the gate before they even get in.
Like what? And again, I know that the answer probably here is it depends on the site, but like in the region and the zip. But like what percentage of bad debt is fraud related versus what is just like bad luck?
Yeah, yeah. So like when we originally were talking, and Karen was like going on this listening tour, folks were saying like, "Hey, I have a collection problem," and really that's a result of two things. One is a life event, which we're talking about today. So
Bad luck.
this life event, somebody gets a divorce, they lose their job, they
Yeah.
get in an accident and can't work. Like those things happen. And like that percentage will vary based on, I mean, you can't predict that, right? Life events are happening. It's more of like the bad actors and the poor screening
Mhm.
decisions up front, which you can analyze and predict. So I think you're going to have a combination of both. You can't really prevent the life events from happening. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just about how do you deal with it? How do you get that person out and give them a nice transition and be a human, be empathetic, but
Yeah. There's an
also,
empathy. That's the empathy playbook, right?
yeah, at the end of the day, like I say this, like treat everybody like I treat my sibling or my nephew, or they're everyone's people. They put on their pants the same way. So even though they may be going through something bad or something's happening, like come on, like treat them nice. But
Yeah.
unless you're going in with a fake ID.
Well, that's the other side of the equation, right? It's like, well, there's intentionality about misrepresentation. And so what is that, obviously, it varies, but like if someone's gonna go look at they're curious about choosing fraud. Again, this gets back to the who has fraud on their to-do list. It's like they look at the bad debt expense. Is it growing? Is it stable? Is it whatever? But still not understanding the composition of it is probably, that might be one of the discovery questions, right? It's like, do you know how much of your bad debt is fraud related versus just life events?
Yeah. And it's honestly, it's tough to track too, because a lot of times these folks they're not telling you the life event that's happening, or the bad actors, like they're telling you a life event happened and they're really not. It's a bad actor, so it's tough to do, but you need to really have like an analytics model that's going to not predict, but be able to identify when somebody is a bad actor or when it's a poor life event that's unpreventable. Also, that starts up funnel when it's like late payments. So you can start to see a trend as folks are paying their rent on like late or being delinquent on their rent. You can see like, okay, the predictability of like, will they eventually be an eviction? Are they a bad actor? And a lot of times like these portfolios will see somebody hop property to property to property. They go over here, they get that look and lease special. They turn and burn it for 2 months and then they move out. Then they go over here, look and lease special, turn and burn 2 months out. These folks know what they're doing. And there's YouTube channels, there's Instagram.
There's lots of ways to learn about it.
It's like it's crazy what's out there, and it's like every day. Like I follow a lot of it, and you'll see so many more ways to circumvent the system.
Are you legally? Is it legal? Are you legally able to track those that go from building to building? It feels like it's not legal.
So tracking building to building, so that you could prevent. So we have a way of like, hey, your ID fails, you are blacklisted. You cannot go to any other community. It's like a clear, right? You're blacklisted.
Gotcha.
But like a lot of the folks within these fee management companies can see a pattern on who's moving where, but just because the name and the social. But is it legal? I don't know if it's legal or not. I can't tell you that answer.
Yeah, it's kind of gray because like on one hand they're giving you consent to use their information for processing. On the other hand, they may not have consented to use it that way. So it's like kind of like not. I'm just trying to think through like our privacy. I've been through privacy like 5 years in a row, and it's like I'm just trying to think of like how could you appropriately use the data and how would you get consent to use it, right? Because there's like the initial consent for that transaction, but I'm just trying to think how you'd actually frame it so you could you defend the whole, like on behalf of the single? I don't know. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's regulation. Like the more what I was talking about is like, say like you're a fee management company and you have 400 assets. That data will tie together in your system on like social and
naturally.
Like, yeah, we are not right now. It's like we can track bad IDs and we block them and they're blocked forever. But it's really based on like you're going property to property. So that application is tied to the property.
Yeah.
Dreamy Dream is you have like a universal ID where like you're almost like a clear. So
it's a clear. Yeah. Yeah. Someday we're getting there. Digital IDs
we'll keep moving and shaking.
Yeah. There's the balance, right, of being tracked and the balance and then making it easy. Like it's like this, like, people still freak out when you go across the border and you got to get a biometric scan, like a retinal scan, right? And they're like, that was kind of creepy. Like, hey, I made it super easy. I'm willing to take that trade off.
Yeah, the Clear's got those new e-gates that like it removes TSA. So like basically, they've got them in like Atlanta, LaGuardia. There's a few other airports, JFK. You basically go through, it does your bioscan, and you're through. You don't need to do TSA. They don't need to bring your ID to the agent. It's going to change the way travel wait times are in these airports, especially this holiday season. I wish every airport had a Clear gate.
Yeah, I've seen it. Pretty cool. It's pretty slick, and you can kind of like the inability to create a fraudulent entry it goes across all different use cases, right?
Yeah, we're going to see it more and more and more. I think like hotels will end up implementing bioscan. Like, you won't even have to go check a key. You just do a bioscan and like get the access to the room. I predict that we're going to see a lot more of the bioscans,
Well,
even like within stadiums, getting into. I just see it. It's inevitable.
well, I mean, it really is interesting if you look at like the recent iOS 18 update. I don't know where it's at on Android, but the ability to create can't really call it on Apple, but it's the face scan is the biometric,
Yeah,
right? And so like that bio, and not just like to open your phone, but like to access certain applications, that face scan now is creating a profile that can be used, glasses on, glasses off, et cetera. And that profile is your biometric. And so, the era of knowing someone's passcode is quickly fading away, and it's
yeah,
all biometric. And so, to bring it all together, like in terms of like leasing applications and making that streamline the process, the biometric is the authentication of the ID, right? And so once you get that part right, now you can go, do I have the right person? And then the second one is that can we triangulate that with their applicant data?
yep.
Because
You
that's
got
because
it.
you're right. If you don't get the person right, it's all falling down.
Honestly, like, if the you like Monopoly, like, you do not pass go, you do not move on.
Yeah.
You have to prove, you not just like, hey, take a picture of this ID. Is the ID real? No, it's identity. So like Clear does like a 42 checkpoint process where it's like matching all these various items, including bioscan, to say, is this person who they are? If they
Mhm.
are, then you move on past go. If you're not, your process is done. We're not wasting time on you. Historically, you're doing like background criminal credit checks, you're spending all this time on income verification, and you don't even know if they're real. It just
Mhm.
it makes no sense to waste time, money, resources, and effort if you cannot prove that this person is who they say they are.
Do you see a world in fraud detection? And we do this. You see this in banking, and I don't know if you can still do this anymore. Where we used to actually take a look at their socials and see how that related to their ability to manage the funds, the money. Do you see that being a data point in the future? Is that contentious? Could that be misrepresentation? Like, is it important?
It depends on the model, right? Like, you have your various credit bureaus and your screening providers that would be able
Mhm.
to pull that information. We do have like some folks saying like, hey, like, no credit, low credit, like some of these college students, like, I want to let them in. Well, okay, great, but you should have a guarantor or somebody that's guaranteeing the rent.
Yeah,
I think that there's various models out there. It depends on what your risk aperture is.
sure.
But with Social Security, is like the CPN fraud is escalating, and if your fraud prevention company doesn't have CPN kind of stop gaps and checkpoints in place, like, you're going to continue to see fake Social Security numbers and folks that like just do not do not pass go because they are not who they are, and they just created this new social and they have no credit
So
history.
what's CPN for the audience?
Yeah. So basically, it's your social security number. So
Hmm.
you can create a fake social security number, and
Hmm.
CPN will prevent that. So you can install various technologies that will detect, has this social security number been active, or is it just created in the last few years? Because if you have
Hmm.
your identity stolen, you can request a new social security number, and a lot
Hmm.
of these fraudsters are doing that to get the fake
Interesting.
social security numbers.
Wow. Um, so when they are looking at kind of de-risking this fraud problem, what other solutions are they looking at? Like, I mean, there's a technology piece, and there's a market there, but what other ways can they do it without buying new tech?
So, well, basically, they don't need to buy tech with 100 because we're free to them, right? So they don't
Right.
need, the operators don't need to pay. The applicant pays. Um, Without buying new tech, really, if you don't have technology in place to circumvent and mitigate fraud, then you're really opening up a risk
Hmm.
for your property. So I would say there are a lot of solutions out there. I'm not saying which one's right or wrong. Obviously, 100 I'm partial
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
but I would say when you're looking at the process and evaluating fraud prevention technology, one, make sure it's like not siloed, and it all kind of like ties the data together. Two, I would say that make sure it's removing the leasing team. So get rid of that conflict of interest. reduce that forensic accounting from your leasing teams and let them do their job, which is leasing. And then the third, I would make sure it aligns with your financial model and the maths, and you make sure that it has technology in place. Like you mentioned, like CPM, like your credit privacy number, make sure that's checking those items to be able to circumvent these fraudsters from going into the process and going
I
into
actually
your
really
phone.
like how you frame that. That might be a new question for next year. Is like, how would you advise buying, this kind of a solution? Because like how you said that, right? Like, make sure it's not siloed, because then you close off your gaps, your data kind of risks you can see around the corner. Get releasing teams, eliminate the conflict of interest. That's going to naturally kind of like salt the results anyways. But let them focus on their job, revenue generating activities, clear their calendar for all the bogus applications, and clear any temptation to do something that might be offside, and then aligning that pricing with your financial model. Like those are good little buying cues for someone who's looking at solving this problem and figuring out, okay, how do I actually activate this in Q1? Because we're going to see a problem. If we're going to see an uptick in leases and, we're leasing this up or whatever, there's a leasing season that comes in around the corner, and we want to make sure we're in a good position. But I like how you kind of frame that, because like that's good coaching for anybody to consider. And, naturally the questions are going to point to your solution, but ultimately those are things to consider broadly when you're
Yeah.
thinking about how to interrupt your leasing cycle, your leasing flow.
I would say there's like a fourth component too, which is like you have to be willing to have change management. Because if
Mhm.
you keep doing the same thing you've always been doing, and like you're just going to be stuck in limbo land and definition of insanity, right? So if you are willing to change and you get buy-in from your teams to change and take practices from like best practices from other industries like mortgage, fintech,
Yeah.
that's where we that's where we're like kind of like focusing on. It is going to be a change, and there is going to be some bumps in the road for the leasing teams and others, because without change you're just doing the same thing. So
Mhm.
that's where it's like, also we look for partners that are willing to change, that are open to change, and we align incentives, because
Well,
there is change.
and hopefully they've already, like in the hell yes context, they've already decided that they want to change because their current state is untenable. Like,
Yeah.
like what we see out there is like people who are like, hey, like my bed is bad. I can't redo this in 2026. And all signals are pointing to a redo if we don't change something,
Yeah.
you know?
It,
Now you guys don't sell every deal you go at. So what kind of objections do you get when people are evaluating?
Yeah, I think there's multiple objections. Like some folks want to stick with like the full stack with your PMS system, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
these PMS systems offer a plethora of products, right? So,
Yep.
and they just want to stick with full stack. Others, it's not the right time, right? They may not be have the resources and the team in place on the back end to do a change like this, because it
Right.
is it is a big management, like flip the script, and you do need internal teams to basically manage, buy in, and have internal advocates to roll out this process. So they
Mhm.
may not have the resources, or they may be implementing too many technologies at the time. So um, we get a lot of objections where it's like, right now is not the time. Like it is not a no, we're just like no today, but like can we
Mhm.
please stay in touch on like what you're doing, and we love what you're doing, and we want to continue to understand, because there will be a time where we need to move on. And I think the third is like there are a lot of fraud prevention technology companies out there, and some may have like relationships with others that are doing the job just kind of mediocre or halfway, and
Mhm.
they're fine with that, you know. So some folks think like don't fix what's not broken, and it is broken. They might not just know it. So
Sure.
we get object, but honestly, there's not like a hard no. We've had a we've had a very adopting audience when it comes to understanding and listening to what our goals are and what we're doing from a technology standpoint for fraud, and we're excited to see what this year brings us.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, especially considering that those that are nefarious have more tools than they ever had before, right? With respect
Yeah,
to being able to reproduce. Like, I mean, even if you did a live interview, that can be now, you know, duped. So it's
yeah.
crazy what's possible now. So then when you look back, like, kind of like giving your career and the course of your career, what's the, what kind of advice did you give yourself, or what kind of advice did you give somebody else who's just joining in?
Yeah, that's a good one. Advice to give myself, I would say like don't be over hypercritical on when you don't succeed or when you fail. Take a little bit more time to say no to certain things, right? I like to say yes to everything. And I look at it like your day is like $1,000, and every minute you give, you're like taking money out of that pot. So I
Mhm.
don't like to give myself to overextend myself in a way that I'm like losing money. So because sometimes you just like basically I say yes, 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 and
Mhm.
you just burn out and it's not productive and you're giving like half your attention. And I think it's like say be more intentional on what you're gonna do and go all in rather than just doing everything that everyone approaches you on. So I think I'd go back and really be more intentional on saying no. And I still have a hard time saying no, but I think that's like a constant thing I involve.
Well, I think this,
Involve my,
because like the other advice is be curious, right? So like be curious and be intentional. Sometimes you got to figure out what you're going to do today,
yeah,
because you can be curious all day long and not get anything done, or be intentional all day long and just keep doing the stuff that you're doing. So it's like, I'm with you. Like it's trying to figure out the time to be curious and the things to be intentional about.
exactly. And it's really just spending more time and like prioritizing like what's most important, what's going to be best for you, your mental health, your
Yeah.
job, your spouse, and prioritizing those items. And sometimes work gets prioritized over spouse, and like that's what I'm working on both.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
the
yeah.
other I would say is like never burn a bridge, right? So I've always had that methodology. My mom taught me as a young kid, just like don't burn a bridge, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. So it's really you never know who's going to be working with your company in the future. Like it's a very incestuous industry.
Yeah.
So just treat everybody like look at Karen and I. We were competitors and now we're partners. So it's you
Yeah.
just never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So treat everybody with respect and don't burn a bridge.
There's a really good expression that was taught to me by one of my dads years ago. It's an Indian expression, and it's something like this: that like when you're going up the mountain, you're looking up all the time, but when you're coming down, you're looking down. And so the expression being like those that you walk over on the way up are the ones that need to help you from falling on the way
On the
down.
way down.
So be
That's a good one.
completely mindful of the bridges that you're of the relationships you build, because that's all you are
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
it's
You know
that's a great analogy.
what? Who should we have on next on the show next?
Yeah, so this one I thought about. So I think we should have my buddy Mike Davis. He is the chief sales officer at Tour 24.
Oh yeah,
Mentor, closer. He's a good guy. So I think he would add some energy, and
I'd
you
love
could
to have
get
him
that
on.
conversation.
And he just hired Regan Hardley.
Yeah. He's a he's a legend. So I think he'd be a good one to have on.
All right.
He,
Well,
he'll come better dressed than us. So
hey, it's the second last day of the last full work week before the holidays, so we're allowed to kind of like yeah, those
yeah,
224 guys, they present well.
they do. Yeah, I worked
Top
with a lot
notch.
of them at Knock for many years. So they're
Excellent.
good.
Well, thank you today for joining us today on the show. Lots of really good intel there. I like the broad cocktail conversation. Like it's interesting, kind of like when you think about the gaps, the unknown gaps that we have about people that are going to be contributing to that revenue row. And it is people that are paying those invoices, and they're coming out of their salaries. And so there are those that can't afford it, or maybe have life events, and then those that are being intentional about it. And like the human decision making factor around what is a bad luck and what is a bad action is really difficult. And I think I like your point about taking the leasing agent out of the equation, because it's just too subjective. It's too applicant by applicant versus like a system. And it's not, I would say this goes as far as it's not fair,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's not fair to
there's
them.
bias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's super good. And so thanks for everyone listening today. Appreciate the time. And if you're catching up on, again, on LinkedIn afterwards, any comments, we'll get pinged on that on the podcast on Apple or Spotify. Hit like, subscribe, plus button, and helps makes it easier to find people. Lucas, thanks for coming down today. Appreciate chatting with you.
Yeah.
Dave Dexter, thanks for the intro. And I look forward to seeing you in the next show.
Yeah, I appreciate closing out the year. It was
Yeah,
great. I had a
man.
great time today. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me, I'm Lucas at get100.com. So
Perfect.
excited
Or
to
on
talk
LinkedIn.
to LinkedIn's the best
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, LinkedIn. You'll be able to click through on the show on LinkedIn again, or just get 100 email. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
All right.
Lucas. All
Thanks.
right.
I appreciate
Have a
you
good
having me.
Christmas.
You too.
Cheers. Awesome, man. That was great.